Dr. Caroline Williams here, Native Son Nutrition and Functional Medicine, and thank you for joining us, Gerald.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Yes. Yeah. I wanted to invite you here to do recording with us for patients because I met you a few weeks ago when you did a conference for us, and based on your previous experience and all your knowledge, I thought that would be valuable for our patients.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. So my background started way back in my undergraduate. I was pre-med, studied molecular cell biology and psychology at UC Berkeley. And I eventually graduated and became a pharmaceutical sales representative. So I then wined and dined medical doctors who are very intelligent people. And I found that I can influence their prescribing habits based on the number of expensive dinners I can take them out to. Now, of course, one evening, I took one of my highest prescribing physicians out to a doctor at a local winery, and the meal for just us three ended up being almost $600 after tax and tip. So you can imagine $600 just for three people, and that was an everyday occurrence. I mean, literally, I didn't have to pay for food for 5 years, and it was a lot of great food, high quality food that your patient should be eating. And I had one evening just an epiphany that I was not actually serving people. I was not helping people with their health by bribing medical doctors through expensive meals to prescribe medications to people who never needed them in the first place. And I promoted a lot of the commonly prescribed medications, so blood pressure lowering medications, antidepressants such as the SSRIs, proton pump inhibitors, the PPIs for digestive challenges. And eventually I woke up. And so I left the industry. I moved to Asia, did my master's in business, and I actually worked as a business consultant for a Taiwanese herbal company and realized, wow, holy smokes, there's a whole world to healing naturally without side effects that drugs, surgery, and radiation bring. And that's kind of what most people are used to. I mean, I grew up in that world too. Mm-hmm. Many of our patients probably grew up in that world. And so I woke up one day and I said, okay, I'm done with this. So I went to Asia and I was working with these herbal companies. I got my first chiropractic adjustment, which was amazing. Mm-hmm. I even received some body work to the point where, I actually hiked I hiked while I was in Asia, and I slipped and I couldn't touch 12 o'clock. And I went to see, my Twain practitioner, which is like a chiropractor of the East, and he just worked on my tissues for just 15 minutes. And in 15 minutes, I could touch 12 o'clock, and I thought, this is amazing. And I didn't have to have 3 months of painkillers and muscle relaxants. That was it. So anyways, I came back, long story short, became a nutritionist. I published a book called The Pharmaceutical Myth, and realized that there are so many people out there, and many of your patients are actually taking chemicals when they should be eating nutrient-dense food and herbs to resolve their challenges. And so anyway, so that's kind of my story. I now teach practitioners and colleagues such as you and many of our colleagues out there so that we can help as many people become healthy and happy ultimately, and I've just seen so many successes. You've seen so many successes of people who engage in natural solutions, and to the point where they can minimize their need for pharmaceuticals, and in many cases even no longer need them. They can avoid unnecessary surgeries and all. So,
right.
Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of the synopsis, a little brief timeline of who I am and
how you got here.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, because that's what we do here is we honor cause and effect as to why people develop the issues in the first place. You didn't develop an issue because you didn't have enough lipitor, or you didn't develop an issue because you didn't have enough, SSRIs, like you mentioned before. As far you didn't develop it because you didn't have enough drugs, right? There's obviously reasons that these things developed. A lot of people don't realize that nutrient deficiencies, can lead to disease. They also don't realize that there is such a thing as drug-induced disease. And so that's a lot of what I see. A lot of patients come in and they're on certain medications, and I can give them the nutrients that their body needs, and I can also in many cases remove what's kind of interfering. But as long as they're on those drugs, I'm not going to be able to stop the damage that are being done by the drugs.
Yeah, and that's a big challenge, you know. And for anybody who's watching this video, you know, first off, if you're on a prescribed medication, for any dosage adjustment, always work with your prescribing physician. You know, I work with clients and I partner up with their medical doctors, and Dr. Williams does that too, partners up with their medical doctors, because every drug has the potential for causing withdrawal syndrome. So if at any point someone were to suddenly stop any medication whatsoever, they could feel pretty horrible and develop symptoms of withdrawal. And so anybody who's watching, just always work with the prescribing physician for dosage adjustments. Now, in the event that your prescribing physician is not willing to guide you off gradually, then you can either come to myself or Dr. Williams' office, and we can then refer you to our partner medical doctors who have that experience and understand that risk. And you know, there's a couple things that you brought up. You brought up, you know, drug-induced diseases. So one disease causing another disease,
right?
And then drug-induced nutrient depletion, right? And then the challenge of really getting people well when they are undernourished,
right?
You know, so absolutely, you know, they're at the root cause of most health problems is due to poor nutrition. And you know, just like your patients, my clients, when they come in, they think they're eating a healthy diet, but they don't realize that maybe the food that they consume was genetically engineered,
right?
Or had all these pesticides, which, you know, are carcinogenic in some cases, or they had the food was refined, so like white flour, white sugar, white bread. You know, they've had nutrients stripped, and so people, unfortunately, you know, and everyone is doing the best with what they know.
Sure.
You know, and,
right.
And of course, you and I have been in this field for nutrition for, you know, decades, and we understand that they're taking things out of the foods that our body needs.
Yes.
And because of that, we develop health challenges, and the natural solution is to bring those things, those food substances that were originally removed from the food, put it back into our body.
Yeah.
And then our body's going, it's happy. It's like, I'm whole again. You know?
Yeah. It can function like it was intended to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other aspect is, so, you know, the great thing about, I mean, and maybe in a little bit you can share with how you work with your clients, but, you know, I think for your viewers, most of them realize that changing their dietary choices, getting on supplements that are basically food concentrates, concentrated foods,
right?
Especially foods that maybe your viewers are not used to actually consuming on a regular basis.
Right. True. Yes. A lot of people don't eat the things that our great-grandparents ate and before them.
Yeah.
And those were very nutrient-dense foods, and people don't eat those today. So that's true.
Yeah. Like, and one example would be liver. You know, most of us remember.
Organ meats.
Yeah, most of them remember our grandparents feeding us liver, but today we don't consume it. And just because we don't consume it doesn't mean we don't need it.
Right.
You know? So, then we have the aspect of drug-induced diseases. So
definitely drug-induced dysfunction, like you said, because a lot of drugs can actually deplete nutrients as well. But I call side effects collateral damage. You know, and it's interesting. It's very easy to destroy something. You can destroy something instantly. It's what's hard is rebuilding. That's what's tough. That's what takes time. So, you know, we want to find something as early as we can so there's less collateral damage that's occurred from whatever that problem is upstream. Drugs can lead to damage. Alone just in the kidneys and the liver, just from having to process the drug because it is a chemical. And drugs are extreme on the body. They're nutrition, herbs have more of a balancing effect. Drugs are extreme. They force something to happen. There's a lot of times because there's this reductionist thought process. There's not a holistic one when introducing drugs. They're not taking into consideration the downstream effect of that drug over years and years and years. And so a good example I'll use with patients is cholesterol lowering drugs. You know, the downstream effect that has is pretty catastrophic. So do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because of your experience as a drug rep.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, there's a cholesterol myth out there. People are scared of cholesterol, and it's like, well, first off, the liver makes cholesterol. It's the largest producer of cholesterol. The reason why it produces it is to send it to the brain. You know, the brain is, majority is DHA, essential fatty acids. The other part of it is cholesterol. And if we, if my clients or your patients take a statin drug, then they're inhibiting the production of cholesterol, and then we start to see certain cognitive side effects, loss of memory, stuttering in speech, etc. In addition, cholesterol is actually a precursor to the formation of certain hormones, which are called steroid hormones. And you and I see it. We'll have male clients come in, male patients, and they'll say, "Oh, my doctor says I have low testosterone. I've got low T." Well, oftentimes I'll look at the history, and you see this too. They've been on a statin drug for 10, 15 years, and this drug has now inhibited the liver's ability to produce sufficient cholesterol.
Right.
And then this cholesterol is supposed to go to the testicles or the adrenals so the individual can make these hormones, but they don't have that. It's kind of like they're running in a deficit. And so it's important. You see that as collateral damage. I see it as collateral damage. And the drug industries think of it as, great, we can sell two drugs.
Yeah.
We can sell the statin drug, and we can sell the testosterone cream.
It's good for business.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
It is, yeah. And years ago, I read articles about how they've shown that statin drugs cause the brain to literally shrink. So it's understandable that if your brain shrinks, the function of the brain is going to reduce. And dementia is a very common side effect of, a statin. Like you said, and I said, we consider that collateral damage. But this is all how you look at it, right? And if you want to be healthy, it's good to use that as a last resort, not as a first. We're not against drugs here. It's not about being against drugs. It's about being responsible where drugs are concerned and using drugs where they're appropriate, right? Not where they're inappropriate, considering that, and you can speak to this, but we are a fifth of the world's population, but we take over 50% of the drugs in the world. We're way over medicated as a society, and we're not healthier for it because we rank 36th of all developed nations in healthcare, like 36 or something.
The U.S. is ranked really low, but is the largest consumer of pharmaceuticals. So
yeah. And you see when people that are on these medications, I think about like all the cholesterol-lowering drugs, and that continues to increase because they've changed the parameters around how or when it needs to be prescribed. But we don't see reduction in cardiovascular disease. Right. It's actually increased. Yeah. So it should make sense that that's not the answer, but that doesn't seem to change in the medical model.
You can thank all the advertising dollars. It's unfortunately only in the United States and New Zealand are the pharmaceutical companies allowed to directly advertise on television, and of course, now unfortunately that's kind of if there's a health problem, someone thinks they got a health issue, they think right away I have to go see my medical doctor, and then I have to think and ask for a drug, and that model could work for some, but for many, especially your patients who are sick and tired of being sick and tired and being prescribed multiple medications, they come here into your office, they come see me, and and then they find out, oh, there's a different way. I don't have to go down the route of drug, surgery, radiation, and we know historically that also, and you may know someone who's on this path. You may know someone who's got on one particular drug, developed a side effect, maybe even a second disease from that first pharmaceutical. They're still on that drug, and then they get prescribed a second pharmaceutical, and then they continue to go downhill from there in a little more faster, rapid fashion. But then when they come and they meet you, they meet me, then they realize, oh my gosh, maybe I should be eating chemicals for nutrition.
Yeah, much more, like you said, every medication that's added more kidney stress, more liver stress, not to mention what it's altering in terms of other things downstream, like, the cholesterol aspect. So a lot of times I'll have patients, the reason patients come to me is because they want to understand the reason why the dysfunction of the disease happened. It's not about treating the effect alone, it's about addressing the cause, because there's a reason for everything that happens, and we want to honor that truth, right? A lot of things that are being recommended today treat the effect, but they don't address the cause.
Right.
And so you never actually resolve the issue.
Yeah.
But if you deal with the cause, the effect changes, right? You address that and you get over the issue, and then everything we're doing becomes preventative. And it really turns, you might have came in for a reactive issue, but then it becomes proactive,
Yeah.
right? And you prevent, you don't have to experience that again unless you consciously choose to.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do, is like empower patients. A good saying that I heard recently was, how you feel is not an indicator of how healthy you are. So you can't just base it on that. You need to have a greater awareness of like what's happening below the surface of what you're just consciously aware of as to what's happening, right? And there's different approaches. If you go the conventional medical model, they're trained based on the tools that they use, which are drugs and surgery. And there's a place for that, right? In emergencies. In extreme situations, you might need extreme measures. And then what we do is we're trained based on our tools, which are herbs, nutrition, those type of things. Not having proper nutrition, we know, contributes to a number of disease processes. And certainly just degeneration alone.
Yeah.
Just degeneration alone. So if you want to prevent that, you're never going to prevent that with drugs. You're never going to prevent degeneration.
Yeah, the way I like to do it is, most of my clients get this, and your patients do it too. When you explain to them, you can only build a new version of yourself with the genuine replacement parts. Mm-hmm. That's it. I mean, it's if you just all of a sudden started eating, plastic apples instead of a real apple.
Right.
You can't make a healthy version eating plastic, but you can make a healthy version of you by eating actual phytonutrients from foods provided by nature, and so, and the same thing is they can be eating plastic apple, they can be eating an apple made out of certain chemicals or pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. It's still the same. The quality of the new version of me tomorrow is going to be dependent on what I put into my body today.
So you are what you eat.
Exactly, literally. You are what you eat and don't excrete. Too,
yes.
So,
yes.
And that's where we
can hold on.
Yeah, and that's when we get to the second point. It's we got to look at nutritional status, and then we got to look at chemical load. At what point are you absorbing perfumes and colognes and environmental toxins from the air and air fresheners? I was just the other day in an Uber, and there's all this air freshener, and that's all synthetic chemicals. That's not potpourri coming out of that air freshener. And those are chemicals that my body will absorb, and then doesn't have the ability to eliminate. And when we address the poor nutrition as well as the chemical toxins, and we can support the body to eliminate those chemicals or heavy metals, then we start to see the body has that innate ability to start to repair itself, and symptom resolution starts to occur. So maybe you can share with some of the viewers a little bit about your process of how you go about identifying what kind of nutritional status and chemical status that toxin levels or burdens that your patients may have, and maybe kind of walk them through the process of what happens when they come to your office and what can they expect.
Yeah, so we get a lot of calls, people interested in our perspective on whatever issue that they're presenting with. Sometimes they try to fix themselves, and that hasn't worked. That happens. We get a lot of calls like that. And because they don't have a conscious awareness as to where they're at and what they need to do, really, they're just kind of guessing. So how do we determine what they need? What we do is we use a certain amount of objective information in the form of blood testing, urinalysis, hair analysis. We do a physical exam when they come in as well. We do something called a heart sound recording as well. That tells us the status of heart function relative to nutritional deficiencies. It also can tell us like how much stress they're under. We use something called an in-body, which is a body composition analysis. And that can tell us not just what's making up their weight, but how much visceral fat that they have. It gives us that information. We can see if they have insulin resistance from that. A lot of disease processes happen as a result of that. So it gives us markers that we can also then retest on. We take all that, we diversified where we've gotten our information from by doing that. we take all that information and we can determine what that person is missing, right? Like what they need to help support their function better. And the things that are under, like you said, stress. A lot of people come in and they have a lot of kidney and liver stress. And we have ways of dealing with that and supporting that. We put stress into different categories because we take a holistic approach. So we're treating the whole person. We're not, somebody might come in and they've already been diagnosed with a thyroid dysfunction or a thyroid disease, or they might have been diagnosed with diabetes. I'm not treating the diabetes, I'm treating the person. And then that resolves, right? Their hyperglycemia resolves, right? So, but we break it down into categories of stress: mental, emotional, physical, and chemical. And those are forms of resistance. You talk about getting rid of kind of chemical toxicity and getting rid of what's kind of in the way. And we give the body what it needs, and then the body does what it was meant to do, which is heal itself.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's very comprehensive. And we do follow-ups because we need to see where patients are in terms of their progression, right? A lot of times they're making choices, like you had mentioned, that are not serving them in the ways that they're eating. Sometimes it's like basic, like, okay, you're eating in a way that's depleting nutrients, but sometimes they have food allergies and it's causing a tremendous amount of inflammation and they're going down the road of developing like cardiovascular disease. And so it's very serious many times, and we can slow that process down and really even just turn them around. With enough time. We can do that.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, and talking about food sensitivities, the other day I had a child come in, and after they received certain vaccinations, they developed certain food allergies and food sensitivities. And when that didn't get addressed and the child was being fed those same foods that they were allergic or sensitive to, they started developing eczema. And so by running specific tests, looking at immunoglobulin E or G, implementing an elimination diet with some enzyme therapy, we start to see that there's some resolution to their symptoms. And I mean, this is really what you not only are doing is helping people out there to get healthy and happy, but we're doing this collectively. And there's so many people out there looking for answers. And there are, as you mentioned, there are some people who come into you with thyroid problems or hormonal imbalances. And I don't know about you, but I inherit a lot of clients who are being given hormone therapy, whether it's a synthetic hormone or a bioidentical hormone, and they're coming in really messed up. I don't know, is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And, they've been recommended to do that by other practitioners. And it's a different school of thought. It's more of what we call a reductionist approach versus a holistic. And instead of working on improving the body's own ability to produce that hormone, they just introduce it exogenously, and it actually reduces that person's own production. And there's nothing like your body's own production, because when you're trying to do it consciously, you're not going to get it right. You're not going to get it right. And then upstream, it affects the rest of the endocrine system, and so you start to have problems in those areas. So yeah, that's a very common thing that we see. Some of the IgE and IgG testing that you mentioned, we do that here if needed. Food allergy testing, we use a company called All Tests. That's who we use, and then we will do hormonal. Those are kind of additional testing if needed for a patient, but the blood work and the hair, that's all standard that we do for everybody. And then we have certain things that we'll do if it's indicated. So
great. Okay. Yeah, that's great. You brought up that point. If someone is coming on therapy, hormone replacement therapy from another practitioner, I have success, you have success. We can still help those individuals who are on these therapies. Of course, we have to do a full intake, and we have to be aware too. At the same time, are they applying it on the skin? Is it a lotion? Is it cream? Are they taking it orally? Because what we've also found is that not only these creams are altering the hormone levels of the patient themselves, but they're passing these creams on to their loved ones and the people around them and their family.
I have a story on that. Oh my gosh. And if this patient watches this, they'll know. So I did some saliva hormone testing for a patient just to get some more information. and his progesterone levels were like off the charts. And I'm like, okay, there's no way that you're making this. You're getting it from somewhere. And then it came out that his significant other was using a progesterone cream at night, and it was getting on him. So yeah, his progesterone levels were super high as a result of that. So he didn't think to tell me that because he just didn't know. So at that point, it's like, okay, well, either they need to use it at a different time during the day, so you're not like sleeping next to them, getting on you, or they need to cover up where they put it.
Yeah, and more importantly, they need to work with you.
Yeah,
to balance the hormones.
True. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing. I mean, here's what happens. I've seen scenarios where the male had higher levels of estrogen.
Yes.
And they were gradually turning into a woman. And some men who were taking testosterone creams would pass on the testosterone to their significant others, their wives, and they started growing facial hair. You know, either hair around here, maybe the umbilicus.
Yeah.
You know, and or even faster axillary hair. You know, so hormones are very powerful, and I like what you said. It's all about using the natural tools to support the body to make the right amount of hormones when it needs it,
right,
in the amount it needs it, and not to ever overdose on it.
Well, and at least do that first. Do that first before you go to the extreme of doing the exogenous, because you're going to actually be in a worse situation once you stop that hormone. If you ever decide to stop the exogenous, you know, those testicles, they shrink right up.
Yeah.
You know, when you do the testosterone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And exogenous means taken from the outside world.
Taken from the outside.
Yeah, the exogenous. Yeah, I mean, most of your viewers who are male who are watching this know that if they were to ever supplement with testosterone, the testicles shrink.
Atrophy.
Yeah. And we can see that because they're on the outside of our bodies, but what we don't see is that the glands of the endocrine system all the way up to the brain start to actually shrink because we're taking these hormones from the outside and putting them into our body. So, I mean, again, if you're on any hormone therapy whatsoever, don't change any of the dosages without the prescribing physician. Make sure you come in, see Dr. Williams, work myself, just so that we can get your hormones balanced normally. And it's going to be a gradual process.
Definitely. Yeah, the longer you've been taking that supplemental hormones, it's a process to restore normal function again.
Yeah.
But I've done it with patients, and they chose to allow for that themselves. They wanted that. So it's doable.
Yeah.
And it does happen. But yeah, and another thing I've seen with a lot of male patients that supplement with testosterone is they'll have, again, side effects or collateral damage. One patient I had developed secondary polycythemia as a result. Yeah, and he's, 78, so that's not a good thing when you're 78. High GGT, high ferritin. Those are very common things, especially with ferritin. You see a lot with men who supplement with testosterone. So yeah, those are kind of other things that can develop that then lead to other problems. And I don't know why, but like nobody's being educated as that this can happen as a result of testosterone replacement.
Yeah, well, as you all know, I was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and there's only a certain amount of information that we share with the medical doctors, and that's really how to prescribe. There's a lot of known side effects, you're seeing patients walk into your clinic with that are not being taught by the pharmaceutical representatives to the medical doctor for obvious reasons. You know, if I were to go in, for example, the SSRIs that I formerly promoted are now known to cause birth defects. If I had known that they cause birth defects at the time that I was promoting them, I probably would have changed jobs. I probably would have left the industry and probably would have done something more honorable and actually effective to helping people improve their health. Unfortunately, I had a 5-year journey to figure out that was not helping people.
Right.
And now, after working with clients on our end, knowing what solutions are actually effective and natural and don't have collateral damage, now we learn about all of these challenges with these various drugs. And again, it's really everyone is doing the best with what they know. And if you have a loved one who's interested in improving their health naturally without, or at least mitigating the risks of the collateral damage from drugs, surgery, radiation, it's important that they work they work with someone like Dr. Williams. And then I guess maybe you can tell a little bit more, how can people find you if they're interested in working closely with you?
Our website's nativesunnutrition.com, so that has all our contact information, including our location. You can contact us. Sandy, who is my office assistant, can help answer any questions that you have. We always do consultations with patients initially because we want to make sure that, number one, we can help them, and number two, that this is the right fit for them and that we can work together. Yeah, and then after the initial evaluation, we'll create a corrective care plan based on that information that we get from that in terms of what a person needs to actually improve and get better, or maybe even just prevent issues. There doesn't necessarily have to be anything wrong with you to support what's right with you. And that's actually the only way to get healthy, is to support what's right with you. There doesn't have to be anything wrong for you to call and just find out and get an evaluation. And the nice thing is, we're not part of the system, so we don't have to justify what labs that we do. We take a preventative approach as well, and that's why it's so comprehensive. So definitely give us a call. Our phone number is 702-582-1800, and we're located in Las Vegas. But we do telehealth as well. So you don't necessarily have to be in Las Vegas to work with us. We have patients in California, Arizona, and up in
all over the country.
Yeah, all over the country, pretty much. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
I appreciate you coming to speak with us, and I wanted to get your perspective on things because we do have a number of patients that come in are taking medications, and many times it can get frustrating when you're on those medications. As long as you're on them, some of the things that you want to change just won't change because the medication's causing it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and one step at a time. They'll see tremendous results while they're still on their medications.
Yes.
But at some point, if they want to reach wellness, they'll have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
You'll have that conversation with the prescribing physician or your MD colleague that you can refer them to. And ultimately, everyone has a chance to become healthy and happy, and
definitely.
possibly unmedicated. So.
Definitely, yeah. That's somebody's goal for sure. Yeah, absolutely. They just need to make a conscious choice around it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you. All right.